Traditional Navajo society was based on a complex social structure and deep connections to the natural world. At the heart of Navajo's social organization was the matrilineal clan system. Children belonged to their mother's clan, and clan identity determined relationships and marriage possibilities. Extended family groups lived together in scattered settlements across the land. The traditional Navajo dwelling is the hogan, a dome-shaped structure made of logs and earth. The door typically faces east to welcome the morning sun, and the interior space serves for both daily living and sacred ceremonies. The Navajo developed sustainable subsistence practices adapted to their environment. Their agricultural system centered around growing corn, beans, and squash, known as the Three Sisters. After Spanish contact, sheep herding became fundamental to Navajo life, providing wool, meat, and economic stability. Navajo people are renowned for their exceptional craftwork. Weaving traditions include intricate geometric patterns on vertical looms, creating blankets and rugs of remarkable beauty. Silversmithing, adopted in the 1800s, became another distinctive art form featuring techniques like stamping and repoussé. Central to Navajo philosophy is the concept of hosh, representing beauty, harmony, and balance in all aspects of life. This principle guides relationships with the natural world, other people, and spiritual practices. Living in harmony means aligning oneself with the natural order and maintaining balance in all things.
The Navajo first encountered Europeans when Spanish explorers arrived in the Southwest in the 1500s. Relations between the Navajo and Spanish were often hostile. Spanish records from this period describe frequent Navajo raids on colonial settlements. The Spanish introduction of horses, sheep, and goats transformed Navajo culture and economy in profound ways. Sheep provided wool for weaving, which became central to Navajo artistic expression. Horses gave the Navajo greater mobility for hunting, trading, and defense. These animals became deeply integrated into Navajo cultural identity. After Mexico gained independence from Spain in 1821, the region came under Mexican rule. During this period, which lasted until 1848, conflict continued as Navajo bands conducted raids on Mexican settlements while defending their territory from encroachment. A significant cultural development during this period was Navajo silversmithing. The Navajo adapted techniques learned from Mexican silversmiths, transforming them into a distinctive art form. Navajo silversmiths developed unique styles, incorporating traditional cultural symbols into their designs. This craft would become one of the most recognized forms of Navajo artistic expression, continuing to evolve into the present day.
The Long Walk of 1864 represents one of the most traumatic chapters in Navajo history. In 1864, after years of conflict with American settlers, Colonel Kit Carson led a scorched-earth campaign against the Navajo people. Military forces destroyed Navajo crops, orchards, homes, and livestock, devastating their means of survival. Nearly 9,000 Navajo were forced on the Long Walk, a 300-mile march, to Bosque Redondo Reservation at Fort Sumner, New Mexico. During their 4-year internment at Fort Sumner from 1864 to 1868, the Navajo faced harsh conditions that were not suitable for their traditional way of life. About 2,000 Navajo died from disease, starvation, and exposure during this period. The land at Bosque Redondo was unsuitable for traditional Navajo agriculture, and government rations were often insufficient. The Long Walk and the years at Bosque Redondo remain a defining trauma in Navajo history, comparable to the Trail of Tears for the Cherokee Nation. In 1868, after 4 years of suffering, the Navajo negotiated a treaty that allowed them to return to a portion of their homeland. But the trauma of the Long Walk continues to resonate in Navajo culture and collective memory to this day. The experiences during this period continue to influence Navajo identity and resilience in the face of hardship. After years of hardship and forced displacement, the Navajo people were finally allowed to return to their homeland. In 1868, the Navajo signed the Treaty of Bosque Redondo with the United States government, which allowed them to return to a portion of their traditional lands. The treaty established the Navajo Reservation, which initially covered approximately 3.5 million acres. This was only a fraction of their ancestral territory. Over time, through executive orders and acts of Congress, the reservation expanded. Between 1878 and 1934, several additions were made to the territory. Today, the Navajo Reservation spans over 17 million acres across 3 states: Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. It is the largest reservation in the United States. Throughout this period, the Navajo people adapted to reservation life while maintaining their cultural identity. Despite government assimilation policies, including boarding schools and restrictions on traditional practices, the Navajo preserved their language, ceremonies, and cultural traditions. The reservation era marked a time of resilience and adaptation for the Navajo people as they rebuilt their communities on their homeland while facing new challenges. The 1930s marked a pivotal and tragic turning point for the Navajo people when the United States government implemented one of its most devastating policies, the Livestock Reduction Program. In the 1930s, the United States government forced a dramatic reduction in Navajo livestock, claiming that overgrazing was causing soil erosion across the reservation. Between 1930 and 1950, Navajo sheep populations plummeted from nearly 900,000 to just 250,000. This was not a natural decline, but the direct result of government policies that forced families to slaughter their herds. This reduction was devastating to Navajo culture and livelihood. Sheep were not merely livestock. They were central to the Navajo way of life, providing wool for the famous Navajo textiles, food for families, and serving as the primary measure of wealth and social standing. Families who had been self-sufficient for generations suddenly lost their primary source of income and food. The cultural trauma of this period cannot be overstated. It struck at the heart of Navajo identity and independence. The Livestock Reduction Program forced a drastic economic shift for the Navajo. Before the 1930s, approximately 80% of Navajo families relied primarily on their sheep herds, along with weaving and small-scale agriculture. After livestock reduction, many Navajo were forced to leave the reservation to find wage labor. They joined railroad crews, worked in mining operations, moved to cities, or enlisted in the military. As traditional livelihoods became impossible, many Navajo were forced to migrate for work opportunities. They traveled to cities like Albuquerque, Phoenix, and even Los Angeles, as well as to mining operations and railroad construction sites. This diaspora created Navajo communities far from the reservation and fundamentally altered the demographic and cultural landscape of the Navajo Nation. The legacy of livestock reduction continues to affect the Navajo Nation today. This policy created generational economic hardship and eroded traditional self-sufficiency. It forced greater integration with the American cash economy and created lasting distrust of federal government policies. Despite these challenges, the resilient Navajo people adapted, continuing their cultural practices while developing new economic strategies that would shape their future in the modern world. During World War II, Navajo men made a crucial contribution to the Allied victory by developing and using an unbreakable code. The United States Marine Corps recruited over 400 Navajo men to develop and implement a code based on their complex native language. The Navajo Code Talkers developed an unbreakable code based on their complex language. They used Navajo words to represent military terms. For example, America was Nehema, meaning our mother, and airplane was Wotadenei, meaning flapping wings. The Navajo Code Talkers played a vital role in Pacific theater operations, including the Battle of Iwo Jima. 6 Navajo Code Talkers worked continuously during this battle, transmitting over 800 messages without a single error. Their code was never broken by Japanese intelligence. The role of the Navajo Code Talkers remained classified until 1968, more than 20 years after the war ended. In 2001, the original 29 Code Talkers received Congressional Gold Medals in recognition of their invaluable service. This brought national attention to Navajo history and contributions to America. In 1923, the Navajo Nation established its first formal government structure. This government was initially created to negotiate with oil companies that wanted to drill on Navajo land and was recognized by the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. Over the decades, the Navajo governance structure evolved significantly. The Navajo government evolved into a modern three-branch system similar to the United States federal government. The executive branch is led by a president and vice president who are elected every 4 years. The legislative branch consists of a 24-member tribal council with delegates representing the 110 chapters across the Navajo Nation. The judicial branch includes a Supreme Court, district courts, and traditional peacemaker courts that incorporate Navajo customary law. Several key milestones mark the development of Navajo self-governance. In 1969, the Navajo Nation held its first popular election for tribal chairman, a position later renamed to president, giving the Navajo people direct democratic representation. A major restructuring occurred in 1989, officially changing from the Navajo Tribal Council to the Navajo Nation, strengthening the separation of powers and expanding judicial authority. Over time, the Navajo Nation has increasingly asserted its sovereignty in multiple areas. The nation developed its own legal system that uniquely blends traditional Navajo concepts like Hoja, harmony, with modern legal principles. The Navajo government established its own tax authority, implementing business taxes, sales taxes, and regulatory fees to fund essential services. The nation created its own environmental protection agency and comprehensive regulations to protect natural resources and sacred lands. Today, the Navajo Nation operates as a sovereign entity within the United States. It is the largest tribal government in the United States, managing over 17.5 million acres of sovereign land. The nation operates its own comprehensive education system, including K-12 schools and Diné College, the first tribally controlled college in the United States. Navajo leadership continues to develop economic initiatives in tourism, renewable energy, and technology to provide opportunities for its people. The Navajo Nation maintains a direct nation-to-nation relationship with the United States federal government, continuing to assert and expand its sovereign rights. The Navajo Nation's modern governance structure continues to evolve, balancing traditional values with contemporary challenges. Despite centuries of external pressures, the Navajo people have maintained their rich cultural heritage. Cultural resilience remains a defining characteristic of the Navajo Nation, with many traditional elements preserved through generations. However, the Navajo Nation faces significant modern challenges that impact the community and threaten cultural continuity. The unemployment rate in the Navajo Nation is approximately 40%, about 10 times higher than the U.S. national average. In response to these challenges, numerous initiatives focus on preserving Navajo language and culture for future generations. Language preservation is a critical priority, as fluency in Diné Bizaad has declined significantly across generations. While most elders speak the language fluently, each successive generation shows a dramatic decline in fluency, with only about 10% of children now speaking their native language. Language immersion programs have demonstrated success in reversing this trend in participating communities. As the Navajo Nation works to preserve its cultural heritage, traditional arts like weaving continue to connect past, present, and future. Today, the Navajo Nation is home to over 300,000 enrolled members, with approximately 170,000 living on the reservation. The COVID-19 pandemic hit the nation particularly hard in 2020, highlighting ongoing infrastructure challenges like limited access to running water. The nation continues to balance traditional values with modern development, expanding into renewable energy with major solar projects. The Navajo Nation is developing tourism around natural wonders like Monument Valley, creating economic opportunities while sharing their cultural heritage. The Navajo Nation is strengthening educational institutions, including Diné College, the first tribally controlled college in the United States, founded in 1968. While facing ongoing challenges, the Navajo Nation continues to adapt and thrive, balancing traditional values with modern development to create a sustainable future for generations to come.